everybody?
Are we not supposed to have our cameras on?
Yes, mine's on.
Oh, everyone else is like black. I'm like, shoot.
Maybe they don't want to be looking at
We're all
themselves.
doing anonymously.
I have to rename myself because I'm on Karen's account. There I am. Hello. Larry's got a decorative earpiece there.
Yeah, it's a nice look.
Easy. Look better with a mask.
I have the mask, but I'm in my office by myself, so I'm not wearing it.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, everybody.
Carla.
How's everyone holding up?
By a thread.
I was going to say mostly good, but my presentation this morning was a complete cluster because we found out that you can't do a presentation and Zoom on the same computer, and it was messing up the audio. So nobody could hear me while I was speaking if we were virtual. So we had to cancel it, 15 minutes in. So we're going to do our 3 committee days in 2 days starting tomorrow. So
Excellent.
But, that's a good Monday morning of learning how tech works. It worked when we were doing it, but we were using different computers when it all went on my one computer. We didn't think of that. So live and learn.
Own something.
So
would you like us to mute and stop video, or what would you like us to do as participants?
That's great. We will go through some of the guidelines in a few minutes. Right now, I'm just looking at the participant lists to see if we have everybody. I see a lot of people on here, but Larry's going to say a few words first, and then he's going to leave whenever he chooses, and then I will share my screen, and then at that point, you may want to turn your videos off just to make it easy, and then we'll do introductions, etc. But Larry, I think I'm up to 22 out of 24, so we are looking pretty good.
All right, I'm going to start quickly to save you time. First, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for joining, parents and staff members. This is, we as they talk about new normal, this is such a new normal, we don't know. So again, I just want to reiterate for everybody that your goal today, and Shannon will go through it more specifically, isn't to decide for the board if and when or how schools will be in person or virtual. That's really up to the board. What we know is that throughout this fall, we will have kids in schools. Some maybe doing a hybrid approach.
All right, hold on,
Job
Larry.
is to make sure that their social and emotional well-being. All right, they can't hear me.
Because there's so many people on now, we're going to get feedback. So if everyone could mute themselves while Larry finishes up, and then we'll move forward. Okay, Larry, go back. Go ahead.
All right. I'm sorry. Again, as we are learning, as just talked about, we are learning this morning, learning more about Zoom as we move forward. Again, I just wanted to reiterate saying thank you for joining this committee because it's so important to our community. I think this community above all the others, obviously the safety of our kids is most important, and instruction is really important, but making sure that our kids' social emotional well-being is so important. So I want to thank you for being part of this. Again, your job is not to decide how kids will come back to school, but when kids are in school, if it's September 1st or if it's after Thanksgiving, if they are virtual or if they are a hybrid, what do we need to be able to do as a district to make sure that every child's social and emotional needs are being met? And Shannon's going to do the bulk of that work. I just wanted to come on and say thank you for joining and talking about social emotional about work. I'm signing off and not participating today because I'm about to go deliver 24 meals to different kids throughout our community, something that our district has been doing, which I'm very, very proud of. And it's usually Shannon is the delivery person most days, but since she's running this meeting, I'm gonna go do that. So thank you all. Have a great meeting, and I will see you soon.
Thanks, Larry. Okay, so this is Shannon. I'm Shannon Kilden. I'm the Director of Educational Services. I would like to, piggyback on what Larry said and thank you for joining. Technology has been a little bit tricky in the district today, so we are hopeful that this is going to work. virtually, as many of our meetings have been working virtually. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen, and then we have lots of fun things to do today. So my screen is very messy, so don't judge me. Okay. So as Larry said, this is our social emotional reopening committee. So I appreciate to everyone that has signed up. And in a second, I'm going to show you the slide of some virtual meeting etiquette. Because we're a smaller group and we're all virtual and we've been doing virtual meetings, most of you know how to do these things, but this is an open meeting, so certainly feel free to ask questions. Will not stay on mute the whole time because I want your feedback and we need your feedback as a district. But just if you are not talking, just stay on mute because that makes it easiest to not get the background noise. And luckily for today, I'm at work, so no one is going to have to listen to my dogs barking in the background, etc. So just to be conscious about virtual meeting etiquette. This slide is important. Larry went through this slide this morning for those people that were on the safety committee. Can somebody nod to me if you can see my cursor when I do this? Okay, thank you. So we are right here. We are in the reopening workflow committee. That started with our administrative team putting together the 3 committees that are meeting, ours, instruction and health and safety. And then we created working committees, and each of you volunteered to be a part of this committee. So what's happening now is we are here in the working group meetings. We're meeting 3 days this week to get feedback regarding health and safety, social emotional learning. And then after that, we will move back to the administrative group to meet and review the recommendations that our committee comes up with. And then it goes forward to the school board for their feedback on July 28th. And then after the July 28th, we come back together on the 30th of July to take the feedback from the board and problem solve anything that may have come up from the board. And then next step after that, we go back to the administrative team to kind of work through some of the changes and make final recommendations to go back to the school board here. And then because we're only meeting 4 days, we are really going to come up with a template for what needs to happen. And then it's going to really, the action's going to need to be in place. You will notice that some of the people on our committee, when you see the list in a second, are not on this call right now because of life, children, etc., vacations, things, but they will, the people that are really an integral part of the building of the social emotional needs of our kids, such as our new social worker, both of our guidance counselors and some of our staff, will be digging into the work when we get here. So if they're not on the call, don't worry, they will be involved later. And then this is not a one and done thing. This is something, especially with the pandemic and the uncertainty of what might happen if we have to close schools again, etc., that we will continue to be in touch to make sure we're meeting the needs of our kids, families, and staff. So before I move on from that, does anyone have any questions regarding this workflow structure of what our role is? And if you have a question, our group is small enough, if you can just unmute yourself and speak, that would work fine for me.
Will we get a copy of the slideshow?
Yes, you will. Good question, Peggy. The slideshow will be made available to all stakeholders via the website, as well as we do have a note taker. I believe Mallory, I have to look to see if Mallory's on the list, but Mallory is our note taker, and all the notes that she will be taking will also be posted on the board on the website, so that anyone that wasn't able to make the committee today will get the minutes. All right, so moving forward, the charge of our committee, which it was put in the survey, but I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page, is that we're here to promote and support the well-being of all students, families, and staff. And our goal is to proactively plan for ensuring successful engagement for all of those people. So that is the purpose of our committee. These are the people that have signed up for this committee. So if you can take a second to look at the people on the list. If you are someone that signed up later, because I emailed a whole bunch of people this morning that signed up after the initial group list went out. If your name is not listed here, could you say something right now and tell me who you are so that we can make sure that we know who's all on the call?
Hi, I'm Becca Beaupre. My son Will is going to be a 7th grader. I wanted to join. I didn't get to join the earlier meeting because they were having trouble with the Zoom at that point, and I had time today to kind of pop my head in. So I don't know if I'd be available for everything, but I'd like to kind of see what's going on, and just if there's any input I can give at this point, I'll be available for that.
Awesome. Thank you, Becca. Anyone else? Awesome. All right. So there, as I mentioned earlier, there are people on this list that are not able to come today, but these are the people that either will be working with the committee over the next 2 weeks or will be doing some of the heavy lifting after our proposal is put into place. So we do have a good representation of people from both buildings and parents from both buildings. So I really appreciate the diversity in the group. All right. So what we're going to do, and we are very fortunate as a committee, there's this amazing organization, CASEL, which is described on here, Collaborative for Academic and Social Emotional Learning. They created a document specifically around the roadmap for reopening schools, and it is a giant document that we are going to dig real deep in to guide us in our work. And there are tons of organizations, and you'll get a copy of this document today that have partnered around creating this. So essentially, each district isn't required to reinvent the wheel. The mental health professionals in the communities are taking responsibility and have made an entire document for us to use as a guideline. They've made a roadmap, and we're going to dig into this here, but the roadmap basically starts at the top with 4 critical practices that CASEL has developed that they feel are the 4 critical things that districts need to look at when we start reopening schools. As you go down the path, then they want you to plan activities around essential questions, prepare and implement it, what tools are necessary, and how do we sustain the work. So this is the roadmap that we will be using. And if I'm going too fast, or if anyone has questions, again, feel free to just unmute yourself. We will have discussion time shortly. So these are the 4 critical practices that CASEL has developed that we are going to dig into. So each of you is going to read a section, like a brief overview section, not the whole document today, around one of the 4 critical practices. And everyone's assigned a group already, except for Becca. And Becca, I will make sure I put you on a list and email you the things that you need as soon as we get to that point. But these are the 4 practices: taking time to cultivate and deepen relationships, build partnerships, and plan for social emotional learning, design opportunities where adults can connect, heal, and build their capacity to support students. Not only are the needs of our students important, but supporting the adults is critical. Practice number 3 is creating safe and supportive and equitable learning environments that promote all students' social and emotional development. And then critical practice 4 is using the data as an opportunity to share the deepened relationships and continuously improving the supports for students, families, and staff. So basically, the professionals in the industry are saying these are the critical practices that districts should be looking at. So our goal for today is to get an overview of each of these critical practices and plan for the next steps. So each person on the call right now is I'm going to send an email and stop sharing my screen in a section. You're going to get a brief reading assignment for today. And unfortunately, or fortunately, if you're real passionate about reading, there will be some homework that you're going to get tonight so that we can dig in a little bit more into the full document tomorrow. So as you read your sections, as Larry said, we are not here to plan or decide if we should be virtual, blended, or in person. That is not our charge. Our charge is to, when we're reading our documents, keep an eye on the lens of how would this look if we were all virtual, because there may be students in our district that choose an all virtual option. And if that is presented to them, how will we support their social and emotional needs if they are all virtual and that's the choice they make? or how do we support their social emotional needs if the school has to be shut down either by the health department or by the governor again. So we need to make sure we live over here and think about what it'd be like to support those needs if this is our reality. But then we also may end up with a blended model, as we don't know what that looks like yet. We need to think about that when we're reading. And then at some point, most likely, we will have kids in school, and how do we support their social emotional needs if they're actually in a traditional setting. All right, so everyone hopefully can see their name on a spot here except for Becca. And Becca, to be honest, I don't know if there are people missing. I'll email you the group that seems to make the most sense when I look at the participants in the list.
That's fine.
All right, thanks. So group 1, you're going to get an email as soon as I stop sharing my screen that will give you a brief reading assignment around the critical practice 1. Group 2, you're going to get 2, 3, and 4, and so on. So your job during that time is to read the session. So we're basically, I'm going to have you, we're going to kind of stop sharing my screen for a second. And each of you is going to get a little bit of a reading assignment. So you can turn off your video, sit back, relax, read the little section. In your email, there is a shared Google Doc that only your group has access to. So we're not going to do a breakout session because I don't have the capabilities to do that at this point. But each of you will kind of take your break, go off, read your section, which is about 2 pages, take notes together in a shared Google Doc. I would ask that any of the staff members on the groups could help facilitate that, because obviously we are a Google district and all of us know how to do that. Parents, if you know how to do that, jump right in and type some notes. After you're done reading, I'll know you're ready to share out when I see people's faces come back to the screen. So when you're done reading and you've taken some notes as a collective group, we will be sharing out so that our whole group can get an understanding of each critical practice in more details. Everyone makes sense? I know everyone's camera's off now, so that's great. So I'm going to send those emails right now. So then just read, take some notes on your shared document, and then come back when you're ready to go as a group. Just turn your camera back on and we will keep talking. All right, group 4, here comes yours. Group 3, group 2, and group 1. So if you can take a second, go to your emails. The directions are self-explanatory right back in there. And then again, I'm going to stop talking so people can read, and so I can send Becca one. If anyone does not get the email, or if I made an error, I'm going to type my phone number in the chat. So if you're not getting something, just text me, and then I can help you out. Becca, you're the best. Thank you. I don't have to even look that up. All right, Becca, you're good to go. And I'm going to mute myself now and stop talking. Hi, Miss Reed, did you just join our group?
I did, yes.
Okay, let me send you an email with the article that we're reading right now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Would you mind typing your email into the chat below?
Sure.
That will make it easier than I have to go search for it. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Okay, you should be good to go. Group 3, sorry for sending you Article 4 as well. Just read Group 3 and then I just gave you the notes page. I'm sorry to interrupt everyone's reading. I have a few comments in the chat if people are not some people aren't having access to the Google Doc. I'm working on that, but I have the sharing options for anyone with the link. So All right, those of you that are still reading and working, if you could finish up in the next 4 minutes so that we can come back together at about 11:45 to share out. Okay, 2 more minutes. All right, if everyone could come back together and turn their cameras back on. Before we go back to sharing my screen and going through the notes, this would be a great time where we could get to know each other a little bit better. So if you are in group 1 and you just read the first chapter, the first critical practice, if you could unmute yourself and then introduce yourself and who you are and what do you do for the district, whether you're a staff member or a parent, so that we can all see each other's faces and know who's on the call. So group number 1, if you're on group number 1, just take turns and.
Okay. I'm Jess Schaaf. I am the behavior interventionist for the district.
I'm Sarah Lapp. I teach 6th grade science.
I'm Becca Beaupre.
Domsky. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, I'm Becca Beaupre. I have a son going into 7th grade. Right here.
Awesome.
I will.
We miss kids. Put the kid on.
Hey, say hi, everybody.
I will.
He's just finishing up science class.
Awesome.
I'm Katie
Nice.
Steele. I'm a parent of an incoming 5Ker, and my job, I'm a musician in the Milwaukee Symphony. So.
Okay, I'll go. I'm Brian Domsky. I'm at Glen Hills, and this year I'm going to be doing library and literacy.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So before we go on to the next group, I'm going to share my screen and have group 1 tell us about their critical practice. So at this point, here's the shared notes that you should all be able to see now that I'm sharing my screen. I'll zoom it in a little bit. If you were in group 1, if you could just stay unmuted and tell us a little bit about critical practice 1 and what's it about.
All right, I can start since those are my first couple. So really kind of the overall gist of it is making sure that we're staying in connection with all stakeholders, and that includes staff, families, students, everyone, that we're making sure that we're in constant communication with them. So we also want to be sharing out SEL resources frequently. So they gave some different examples, where that could be the newsletter, social media. We want to make sure that we're getting their feedback and their input regularly to make sure that we're staying on top of kind of where people are at. So that might be in the form of regular surveys or focus groups to kind of assess what we need to improve. Just because we implement something doesn't mean it needs to stay that way. So we want to be frequently getting people's feedback on that.
Great. Thanks, Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
The next question was mine. I wrote, how do we encourage peer interaction and social encouragement between the students, which I think is part of this discussion. Is even the stakeholders are the students themselves and student to student. And I, as a parent of a K4 student, that was probably one of the challenges of the younger students, is seeing each other and having that social interaction. They were having real trouble with learning how to do all of this stuff for the very first time. And there was often quite a lot of confusion and delay, amongst those. So I think that's something we really have to remember is part of this, as well as just student to student. I did not write the next part, but somebody maybe wants to add in. That's a good idea, but.
Later on in the document, I added just that in terms of the morning meetings in the spring, and that might be a good way to continue to get the kids to engage with each other outside of the classroom time, where they want to chit chat during class, because the kids want to talk with each other, but class time isn't the best place to do that. So having other meetings and fun learning, or if you can engage with activities that maybe have some educational value, but kids tasks to do or things to do within the group. It's not necessarily schoolwork related or homework related, would be a good way to keep them to connect, I think.
Right. Like some type of virtual recess. I see some.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
That was a common kind of theme, I feel like, throughout our thread, was like providing that student interaction. We know socialization at any level is so important. So I think some people, had some different ideas of like doing maybe breakout smaller groups, to allow that kind of just like natural conversation versus academic focused all the time. So that was a good idea.
Yeah, the next one is mine. And I wrote, how do students build a strong relationship with teachers, and also obviously teachers with students, if starting on a virtual only, or if they're not too far in and they start and have to go immediately virtual. Like, how do we get these teachers and students to have a relationship? How do we hook them together? How do we build that bond that obviously last year the students had already been able to establish with their teacher? And again, this particularly I think is very important and crucial for the youngest students, for whom school and starting school is new and sometimes scary. Seems to be pretty crucial.
And I thought that was a great question. And I think a big thing, so my next thing was like, I think we pull from already existing kind of models that we have. We already have ways that we can ensure teachers can connect with their students. Now we just have to adapt it to a virtual platform. So if we're talking morning meetings, what can that look like virtually? I've seen some great things online about that, or like restorative circles or icebreakers, really taking what we already do as best practice, but just figuring out, and I think that would be a great use of this group, as well as how to adapt existing models to help facilitate those relationships virtually.
Anyone else from group 1? I'm just scrolling up here.
Oh, I was, the next question is mine also, about how much individual contact is possible, and for the kids that fall into the cracks of the typical academic, scenarios, can we utilize the allied arts teachers to help interact with those kids, like kids that are good at a band instrument or great at sports? Can we use those teachers to help be sort of the catalyst to connect them better, especially if they're completely virtual? And how much involvement can those students and teachers have in connection with their main teacher?
That's a good idea. That's a lot of my stuff. Still just, again, using things we already have in place, like instead of recreating the SEL wheel, pull from things that they're already familiar with. I think it's going to be huge. One of the things I've been thinking about, and I don't have an answer for it, but is creating some sort of, I use assessment system, but like way to identify if students or family or even staff is in need of additional support. And then that would get funneled to the appropriate person, whether it's a counselor, social worker, psych, whoever, and then they would get that more individualized support instead of just like generalized programming. I think that can easily be developed, but I think that's something we should look at.
Something that we did in 7th grade this past year, and this was, prior to the pandemic situation, was a little half piece of paper that we would do once every 2 weeks. And it was just sort of like, on a scale of 1 to 5, rate how you're feeling about this, that, and that could very, very easily be, put in an online format or a survey format for at home. Because, as people are saying, that when you're isolated, it, definitely can magnify some of those feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And
For
I've
sure.
seen some short surveys that also can be done by kids regularly.
Yeah, I think those would be good things to look at.
So the next piece was just from parent perspective. The teachers were really good this spring with my son with checking in. And I think that helped, especially getting to know them. They were really good with exchanging, back and forth, and my son wanted to share some pictures. And I think that the teachers were really good at that. And I think I know it takes extra time out of their day in addition to all the other online stuff that they had, but it really made my son feel a little bit more engaged in, discussing with his teachers, just even in class, because they made a point to show that they cared about him. So I think just the connection between teachers in that way remains important, even if it's just a check-in once a week, or go through the list of students and do an email every 2 weeks or something, just checking, hey, how are you doing? Anything you want to chat about, anything you want to talk about in class, anything like that.
For sure.
Great. All right, thanks to everyone for putting notes in here. This obviously will keep this document. This is only the surface of this critical practice, because we're going to dig into this tomorrow. But the goal, again, like I said in the slideshow, is to just get an overview of each of the critical practices so we can see how they all link together before we dig in deep. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing now. We're going to go to group 2. If you couldn't unmute yourself so that we can see you and get to know who you are. Group 2, by the way, Steve Tilley had an emergency. Oh, he's back. I see his face. Hi,
Well, I'll
Steve.
just start then. I'm Carla Pennington Cross. That's my husband making lunch in the background,
Awesome.
in the plaid shirt. I have a son, Nick, going into 5th grade. I have a daughter, Jessie, going into 9th grade. And yeah, I have a significant interest in the mental health conversation, as my kids have some issues, and it's just an area I feel passionate about. So that's why I'm here.
Thanks, Carla.
I'm Jennifer McDonald, 3rd grade teacher now at Parkway.
Thank you.
I'm Samantha Champion. My son Gus will be joining the district for the first time in K-5. I'm also a middle school special ed teacher in another district, so this is obviously close to home. So hearing you guys all talk in the last session makes me very excited to be a part of this district for my son. So very awesome. Good job, guys.
Did we lose Tilly already? All right. Also in group 2 is Steve Tilley. He's the guidance counselor at Parkway Elementary. So hopefully we'll see him more tomorrow. All right. And then I'm going to go and share the notes from group 2. Or did I miss anyone else? Group 2? Okay. All right. If anyone in group 2, then if I'll zoom in on this and then we can learn about critical practice 2 if someone would like to start.
Oh,
I can start with some of them. So what I thought was really interesting, or what I really appreciated, was just the focus on the teachers and the adults in the building and how important it is to also focus in on their health and well-being. Noticing that they also experience some emotions of anxiety, fear, feelings of being overwhelmed, and sadness. That it's important to check in with them and do some community building activities with them to make sure that there's connections happening, providing some professional learning so that staffs can identify signs of trauma and mental health in both staff, but then also in students, which is obviously going to be incredibly important as we move forward.
Somebody's good at bullets. Good job.
it wasn't me.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, Tilly, we can.
Woo! I am working my technology right now. But I was able to kind of look at a little bit at the article, and I was the one that made a few comments regarding just similar to looking at this as kind of a grieving situation for a student or family that maybe has experienced a loss, that, you know, we're really going to have to connect, like as a staff and as students, just making sure that we keep an eye on like certain kids or families who have maybe really struggled with this transition, whether it be virtually or as we eventually begin to transition back to school.
Just to point out, I thought the word compassion fatigue was really interesting. I hadn't heard that terminology before, but I think as educators, that's something that teachers just naturally do. You guys care about your students, and I think that that's something that teachers take on extra emotional worries of their students. And I can tell that that's likely something that you guys do in your district as well. And so I think that that's something that's really important to know too, that that is also something that can happen, and just being sure that you guys are checking in on your teachers and making sure that their well-being is also taken care of, because they're taking care of all of the students in their classrooms.
Yes, I believe so. You can take water outside. Yes, you can.
That looks like the bottom of that. Is anyone else from group 2?
Yeah, Carla here. I've done a lot of work in self-compassion in the last year. And I think I really love that KSOL gave this its separate critical, sorry, that's my son stomping around, gave it a separate critical focus. And I think, I spoke about this at the last board meeting. If our teachers aren't feeling supported and resilient, they're not going to be able to identify needs of students and serve those needs. So, sorry, I'm being very distracted by noise in my house. I think what I really love about KSOL's description here is not just that they're looking at what's going wrong, but also that they're asking teachers and staff to identify strengths that have been newly revealed. And so for me, it's really important that we maintain some of that focus. I've been reading some articles about this. There is a heterogeneous response to what's been happening over the last few months. Some students and some teachers are actually thriving, right? Having stepped away from what our world looked like before. So this is this incredible growth opportunity if we can give our teachers the tools they need to be resilient, to be adaptable. I just love this KSOL model. Just need to say that. That's all.
Wait till you get the whole document. It's amazing. And they really break down each section So I think I
I've
did.
already read it.
Yeah, I was gonna say I sent it
It's
to you.
overwhelming.
It
Yeah,
is
a lot of
overwhelming.
it.
We're gonna break it down to, over the next 2 work days after today, but it is very overwhelming, but it's really good stuff. Anyone else from group 2 have anything else to share? Okay. Group 3, if you can unmute and tell us who you are and so we can see your faces.
Hi, I'm Angela McGuire. I'm the art teacher at Parkway. Glad to be with you all.
I'm Melissa Adamovich. I am a 2nd grade teacher at Parkway.
I'm Allison Tomei. I'm a parent of upcoming 6th grader, 3rd grader, and an incoming K-5 student. And I'm also a teacher in another district.
Hi, Allison.
Howdy.
How are you?
Hanging in there.
Awesome.
I'm Nyama Reed. I got the articles for both groups 3 and 4, so I'm not sure which one I should introduce myself. But so I'm a parent to an incoming 6th grader at Glen Hills at Marsh, and I am a library director here in Whitefish Bay. And then also I'm currently getting custody of my niece from Michigan because her mother died from COVID in April. And she will be at Nicolay as probably a 10th grader. So while I'm really interested in all of the instruction stuff, how we'll make it happen, I thought the emotional part would also be really good for me to read a lot of these articles and be part of to help support her and my son in this transition.
Right. Anyone else from group 3?
Yep. My name is Sam Holmes. I have 2 kiddos at Parkway, a 3rd grader and a K-4 student. I work for a company called Righted School, providing before and after school services in the Wauwatosa School District. And so I've been sitting on their steering committees for reopening schools for the last couple months as well. So I wanted to be part of this.
Awesome. Thank you.
I think I might be the last one. I am Mia Tatum Kreider. I am the school counselor here at Glen Hills, and I also have 3 children, and the twins will be in K-5 at Parkway.
Awesome.
So,
okay. Anyone else? Group 3, did I miss anyone? All right, let's get your notes up. Oh, look at that. We have a cute little emoji. Nice job, Mia. Okay, so again, if you're in group 3, if you want to just share out here, anyone. And I didn't know we were going to have a competition for cute emojis, so nice job, Mia.
thank you.
Bitmojis or whatever they're called.
I just learned how to do that this year. I don't know who, that's not mine. I didn't start off with that one, but.
That first section there was from me, and I was just, considering something that they mentioned in the first group around students having familiar faces to be with them, especially in a virtual setting or a hybrid model. It's going to be really important. It's going to provide that safety for them. And then also the one thing I thought that was also really important was that in a virtual setting, and many of us have been on a lot of Zoom calls or Google Hangouts during this time, and being able to read the room, for lack of better terms, is really difficult. And so one of the things that I've paid attention to a lot, especially in a larger meeting settings where there's more than 20 people, is sometimes the person who's facilitating that meeting is unable to see everybody's faces, especially when they're sharing their screen.
Mm-hmm.
And then a lot of people have moderators who can kind of manage the chat boxes. And so similar to what Jessica said earlier, we need to learn how to take what we know about social emotional learning and then adapt that by using the tools that are available via Zoom and other platforms so that students can communicate their frustrations or whatever. And it'll help students then feel what's going on with their peers during virtual class. I think that was my third thing there too, as far as safe spaces in a virtual setting. they're going to be crucial. In addition to those shared agreements, one of the things that my son Xander, who's going into third grade, one of the things I noticed on some of his Zoom calls was that some of the students had a hard time not speaking over each other, which I know happens in the classroom anyways. But on a Zoom call, it creates even more chaos and confusion because you can't hear anything. And so creating those shared agreements and setting expectations for student input, hand raising, mutual respect, active listening, those types of things are going to be really important to have for that space to end up being safe, in that virtual and hybrid model. So the how in
Put those in
regards
that
to
closet.
how instruction happens
And the other
is
one.
going to be really important as far as
The green
how
bucket
those
on the
teachers are
top
able
shelf
to
on the left,
moderate
top left.
lessons as well.
Anyone else this group's got like Bitmojis and highlights and numbers. Wow. We have some tech people here.
This is Nayam. I didn't write anything in the notes, but one thing I'd like to just kind of, as I talk about this and I hear about frustrations and the emotional stuff, is coming from the parental point of view in the spring, where I would almost end up crying every time I tried to help my son do his stuff, and I realize the focus is the teachers and the students, but if there can be some sort of wraparound work with the parents, whether it's teaching the parents in how to do this to support their kids, because oftentimes we're frustrated and then we're trying to help our child and it's passing on to them. So I don't think we can leave the parents out of this in any of the groups, particularly for the amount of virtual that's going to end up happening. So if we can include that, I did hear that one of the other neighboring districts, I believe Fox Point, had some sort of software they purchased where it trained the teachers in how to virtual teach, train the students in how to virtual learn, and train the parents in how to help their students and the teachers virtual learn. So if we can just make sure to have that wraparound service there for the parents, because we're going to be more integral on the day-to-day than what we're used to.
Mm-hmm. Someone in the chat, I'm not remembering who it was off the top because I don't know who said this, but yes, like hosting these meetings and keeping an eye on the chat and sharing the screen and trying to see people's faces is quite the job. But talking about the SEL practices and the social emotional things, it is very related to the academic piece. And someone said we need to look at the instruction committee and how we can weave SEL skills into the academic time and not just a separate lesson. That is just part of what we do and that's embedded into all the work.
Yeah, that was me. I was just thinking about as far as the training piece for teachers if they're teaching in a virtual setting, that's going to be really important because they're going to get a lot of training on instructional methods. But reading the room, like I mentioned earlier, it's going to be really difficult. And so you may have a child sitting on the other side who's completely checked out, but if you can't see that child, you wouldn't know. And so if that teacher's really involved in giving that lesson and there's no one else there monitoring the chat or even just watching the faces of the students, that's going to be really important to seeing who's engaged and who's not, or who might be struggling.
Okay, well, is Mary going to come over and then invite all the boys over here and then go out to the neighborhood, or is Mary going to just, okay.
Whoever's talking about bringing the kids over, we can all hear you.
Oh, sorry. Didn't realize I was unmuted.
That's okay, just making sure.
Shannon, I think some of the stuff that I put was my highlighted stuff. But were we supposed to do 3 and 4 or just 3? Because
No,
I think I did both combined.
Okay. I must have known that your group was like a high achieving group and put in both of those documents. You were just supposed to get 3 and then note page. So that's okay.
I think some of the stuff typed in, if you go down a little where the highlighted stuff is, some of that is 4, so you can ignore that part. But some of the items that I thought were very important was just the role that we as adults have in, if we want to promote SEL, then we have to also work on it on our own standpoint as well, because everybody has been affected by COVID in different ways. You may know people who have passed away or have people who are ill, and we don't know exactly where. It's trauma, it's PTSD. The people are going through a lot of things now, and it's all unknown. So we just have to be just aware and be ready to kind of, which is why I like, I printed everything because I'm a printer, but why this is a good document, because it kind of is going to help us as teachers, as parents, as counselors, support each other as well as the kids too. But it is hard to get a sense of belonging through the Zoom meetings, because one of my twins, as soon as she had her first little meeting, it was a stuffed animal Zoom party, and they got all dressed up, had tiaras on, and then she got in front of the screen, saw her classmates and her teacher, and just broke down crying. And just was like, she, because she's 4 and doesn't understand, like, I really want to be with these kids and with my teacher, but I'm sitting at a kitchen table and I've been stuck in the house since March. And, and my sister's a nurse, so they know, and my parents are high risk, so they know about the stay away from me, grandma, 6 feet cut, they're just all over the place with their little thoughts, but she just cried. It's going to be interesting. I think we could do a good job though of making, I did some one-on-one group stuff with kids and some small group stuff with kids, even though it's not the same. It still brings them together and makes them feel like they belong. But the rest, I think, part 4, so I apologize.
It's okay. I want to respond to Mia, because one of the things I've been thinking a lot about is that as we ask, how do we reshape our SEL interventions with kids, one of the really important things we need to look at is kids who are thriving and who did well in a virtual setting and a more disconnected setting, and ask, what strengths do they have that we can learn from, so that we're not just thinking about how do we make things the way it was, but also thinking what skill sets can we help teachers and students grow to allow us to be more adaptable, more adapted to really different learning methods, because that's what's coming down the pike. So rather than seeing it as something that we can't respond to, we can look at it and say, we can help you develop skills, SEL skills that allow you to learn in these very different ways and in these different settings.
Some of the other things on this document were ones that I had said underneath Mia's stuff, I think here. Like I read the part that said there should be at least one adult personally checking in with each student regularly. I think that's absolutely critical. So I am a teacher and a parent, so I have two viewpoints on this. As a teacher, I know it was super hard to get in touch with some of the kids. Like there were some kids that I didn't have contact with for a very long time, and then the compassion, anxiety, that was certainly happening, for me. You worry about with those kids. So I wonder if there's a way that if there are certain kids on class lists and rosters that teachers can't get in touch with, that then another set of people can try. And I know we were shipping names off to our social worker at my school, and it's maybe they would have more luck getting in touch. But I think the people who are in touch and regularly checking in and doing everything that the school is offering are going to be the easy ones to keep on track. But there's, I think, a whole population, and maybe it's small in Glendale, which would be great, but I think there probably are some kids that are harder to contact and then check in on all this social emotional learning as well. And I know from the teacher standpoint, it's really hard to keep the whole class going and then check in on those couple that you're just not in regular contact with. So maybe some additional support that way would be helpful.
Yep.
And I think most teachers do try to interject all these SEL skills during their core academic time and not just as its own lesson. And that's helpful, I think, too. And the other part I read that I thought was interesting was that we need to continue to find ways to support families who are struggling. And that also is challenging because that's not always easy to do. Like those are not always people who are reaching out and saying, I need this, I need this, I need this. You kind of have to like seek them out yourself and help before they fall through the cracks as well.
Yep. One of the groups, and I can't remember which the reading it is, has a document, and we'll talk about this more tomorrow as we dig, actually with group 3, it'll be the next one, that has a virtual relationship mapping that you actually, our district is small enough that there's really no reason why we cannot map every single child to make sure there is an adult connected with them on a regular basis. And if the classroom teacher is unsuccessful in getting a hold of them, then what are the steps that are put into place? So we'll dig into this a little deeper in the next day or so, but this document has suggestions on how we can make sure that we have a map of every relationship out there with kids.
I think that's pretty important. There's always going to be the ones that are real easy to contact, families and students. And I feel like the ones who aren't so easy to contact probably need to be contacted the most.
All right, let's move on to group number 4. If you have, if you could, group 3, please mute yourself, and then group 4, if you can unmute and introduce yourselves and what you do. And
I'm in group 4. I'm Colleen Buckley. I'm 3rd grade at Parkway.
I'm Peggy Rodriguez, school psychologist at both buildings and coordinator of special ed.
Dominic McFerrin. I am special ed at Glen Hills Middle School.
Hi, I'm Kristen Holmes. I'm a mom in the district, also married to Sam Holmes, who's in this group as well. And we, like he said, we have a rising K4 kiddo who was in K3 last year. So he has some special needs, as well as a rising 3rd grader. My interest in this group is I'm an intensive in-home psychotherapist working in Milwaukee. So I do a lot of, I'm a therapist, so I work, I've had the privilege to work with several people who are in this meeting and just in IEP meetings and things like that. But then also I work in Milwaukee County, Waukesha County as well, working with kiddos. So I am on the, definitely on the social emotional side of this pandemic for sure.
anyone else from group 4? Well, let's share our screen to learn about K4. Okay, critical practice for physically safe, supportive, engaging learning environments that promote all students' social emotional development.
I think someone needs to mute their microphone.
Whoever's running water, we can hear you.
You need to mute your microphone.
I just wanted to jump on real quick so we are group 4, but we were doing reading of groups. It was the 3rd practice that's on here. So there may be some overlap then with what we just discussed, and then we could maybe jump back to 4. This will just build on maybe what we had already discussed. So I'm not sure how much more to go into depth about this, but you know, one of the things it talked about was just the different developmental levels and the different kinds of transitions and ways that we might approach some of those transitions based on the age levels of the students. I didn't do this first part, so I don't know if anybody wanted to jump in there.
I think just summarizing that about how important it is that to support the students where they are developmentally. Early childhood is very different from elementary, very different from middle school. I don't know who put the link in. But this article also refers to the one checking in with a student, one adult for every student. And I totally agree with that. And I also think we shouldn't wait for the parents or the kids to reach out. We need to be the initiators, because I think there was sometimes that happened during the long distance learning just because we were new. But I think it needs to be made a regular thing that adult does, or whoever does.
Right. Yeah, and Shannon, if you could go back up to the first part there, I wanted to highlight that, you know, what this article really talked about was considering the impact of the pandemic on these challenges, you know, coping with stress, managing stress, practicing empathy, social bonds, making healthy decisions, collective action. These are skills that our kids are learning from just being involved socially. But then also this idea of managing loss and grief. And I love how the earlier group talked about that, but I think it's important for us moving forward to consider that everyone at our schools have been impacted by loss and grief. It's not just loss of life, it's loss of normalcy, of activities, of hundreds day, just a lot of different things. And I also linked an article from Harvard that was released about the discomfort that we've been feeling is actually grief and loss. So it's not just about the death, right? It's about just how things are entirely different than they were at the beginning of last year. And that this next question was mine, that I'm wondering if there's a way, because this is a lot now that we've talked through most of these articles, this is a lot of touch base, right? Of interaction with the kids beyond academics and things like that. And so I'm also wondering if we can pull from our volunteer pool, PTO, people who have experience, parents who just have compassionate hearts and that maybe are connected with students that might fall through the cracks, if there's a way to tap into those bases as well.
I think that's further down. I think they talk about including parents, but and I like as far as this, the top part's in school. We've already talked about strong teacher-student relationships, but it also talks about keeping things somewhat the same. The looping with the teacher, staying in the same classroom so that you have strong teacher-student relationships, predictable schedules, minimizing transitions, and then virtually using those same sense to promote structure and safety for students.
Mm-hmm.
And then my stuff is in the blue. It was kind of what Jess was talking about, that throughout the day, even during academic instruction, like someone else mentioned, it doesn't have to be a separate thing, but use what we have, the Ross Green method, the zones, restorative justice, responsive classroom, and other things maybe, but revamp it to fit a virtual environment. Same with the identifying developmentally appropriate competencies. The social thinking curriculum is really good with that too, talking about stress management and communication and how do you ask for help, and it is okay to ask for help, and collaboration between students and adults. Oh, if you go back up in the blue.
This blue?
Oh, this was just engaging students in conversation, that it's okay to talk about it in class or, virtually. So, and I know we're focused on the pandemic, but there's so many other things that students are experiencing trauma from or are affecting them. And then I had a question, if you scroll down, like the article says, discuss facts versus misinformation. How does a teacher handle, like if there's arguments between students, particularly virtually? Like they're hearing one thing and other students hearing something else from their family or whatever. I don't know. So that's something I think we need PD for the staff, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm gonna stop. Oh, let me go back to this.
And then the identifying struggling students, I think a survey would really help that. I know the teachers are wonderful at knowing which kids are really struggling, but I think a survey would really help.
Yeah. Thanks, Peggy. So that was our share out here. So thank you to everybody. Great job. We are, we have a good start here. The next steps for where we're going to go with this is, of course, now this is where I can't see anybody, but that our next steps would be for our Tuesday and Thursday this week. We're going to dig in deeper and plan around critical practice 1 and critical practice 2. And I'm going to send this entire document to everyone, the full document. And then if you can just look for the pages that you're assigned to read this. We kind of have an overview of what it's all about, but tomorrow we'll dig into 1 and 2, and then Thursday we'll dig into 3 and 4 to kind of really put some plans into place. So
you don't have to send it to me. I already have it.
Gotcha. You might get it anyway because I have a group list. But these are the people that are assigned to critical practice 1, and I will send you the slideshow so that you don't have to write this down right now, but the pages in the document are listed there. And the people on the other side are going to do critical practice 2. And then we're going to kind of break out and do this in a similar way so that we can all learn about each practice, but we're splitting the work in half. The next day, or Thursday, we will go into 3 and 4. Feel free to read ahead, or if some of you that are, left to right thinkers need the whole document, you will get a copy of the entire document. So if you want to scan through it, but just really try to dig deeper into the pieces that you're assigned to.
Shannon, is there a way to have breakout groups when we read and then talk to each other, or no?
Yeah, I'll work on getting that so that you can have a discussion point.
Okay.
Yep, so the nice thing about this whole document is that this is also this roadmap here. I'm going to click on a link. It actually will provide us a document that they created, which kind of gives the purpose of the document for the roadmap, teamwork, sense of urgency, time, complexity, feeling overwhelmed, etc. And then it takes each practice that we just learned all about, talks about the priorities of each of those subpoints. What do you need to prepare for next year? How will we implement in the first few weeks? And then how do you sustain it? And each one of these topics is discussed in this giant document. But this is a fillable form, so we'll be able to actually take notes on here for next steps and recommendations. So each section is broken down. This document is very user-friendly. So when we go back to where we started our day talking about, this piece here, we're going to do all this work here, and we're going to bring together some components that we will take to the administration, which will eventually go to the board. And then the board may say, what about this? What about that? And then we'll come back together to revamp. We aren't expecting this committee to actually dig in and do the professional development for staff or do the actual work that you would do. That's where it comes into here, where you're getting action to implement, where many people on this call, such as Peggy and Steve and Mia, etc., will be a big part of that, but they will not, you guys as a committee will not have to do that dig in. Thank you. So I'm running out of power and my cord won't work.
I'm very happy that there's actually special ed teachers here from other districts and therapists and everybody else, all the parents and teachers who volunteer.
No, this has been a very effective group, so I'm thrilled. Let me get back where we're at, as we're almost done here. We will end a little early today, which should give you, I know it probably doesn't because you probably have kids at home that you need to be getting to, but that we will give you some time to actually read the practices for tomorrow. So any questions before, let me stop sharing so I can actually see people's faces. There's a bunch of things in the chat.
This is Nyama. One thing I noticed is a lot of this discussion kind of revolves around almost assuming virtual versus SEL if the kids are in the classrooms, whether at the beginning or later. I've seen some districts where they've got the tables apart and plastic in between them, so, and I know the decision on how much virtual versus in person is still ongoing, but I don't want to miss the thoughts of in-person SEL versus all virtual, if that is going to be a possibility for some of the people when they start in just a month.
Absolutely. If you think back to that slide I showed you with the picture, every time we read these documents, you need to think about the completely virtual option, the hybrid option, and the in-person, because some of our students may choose virtual, and that doesn't mean they shouldn't have access to social emotional supports. And some of our kids will be sitting in classrooms and may need different supports there. So we have to use all of those lenses when we look at the documents.
Yeah, because if anything, it might almost be, I don't want to say more traumatic or differently traumatic, for them to come back into what was normally a safe space and have it be very different. We experienced that just with people coming in the library, and they're adults. So the thought that they're going to school and that all of a sudden there's barriers and they can't hug each other, that's going to be a whole different set of issues for them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that's the important part of this conversation too, is that there is so much that is unknown as to what that will look like. I feel like we can all agree that things change very quickly with the pandemic, and this district's doing this and this district's doing this, and what about this school down south? And so I think that's going to be the challenge in our group, is really really presenting a plan that will work for all options, regardless of what that looks like.
Absolutely. And Carla, you keep mentioning this, but some of our families may, even if we do open up for in-person learning, and that's the decision that the district and the board makes, we have families that may choose virtual as what they're choosing to do for their family for whatever reason, and we need to be prepared for all of those options. So it's a great point.
Shannon, I had a question. This is Katie Steele. I was wondering two things. Number one, is this committee going to ever be able to dive into younger versus the older kids? Are we going to divide ourselves at some point in discussing the differences, maybe that, or how best we serve both sort of age demographics?
So, yep, inside the document, and you'll get a better look at it when I email it out after our meeting today, there are several sections that are specifically designed around, and of course we're a K-8 district, so other districts have the 9-12 component. So there's sections in here that are, high school, but it does talk about what do kids in the elementary or early childhood need. And it is different. Peggy, I think you said this, that it's different for each grade level and how we support the littles versus a middle school kid. And I think it's important, because we're a small district, that we have a K-8 plan in place, but we definitely need to dive into each of those age groups in a different way, because they all have different needs. But the document does separate that out.
Okay, and then one other question, and perhaps you can't answer this now, but are we to assume that once this is a plan that's approved, or the scenarios are approved by the board, are we to assume that parents who decide virtual will need to decide that for an entire semester, or are you going to have to lock yourself in at a specific time, assuming that that we have a choice? You know what I'm saying? Because I know a lot of districts are required to say and guarantee that that's there. Are we thinking?
Yep. So we are in the process of working on another parent survey to kind of get an idea where parents are thinking right now of how they're feeling about the return to school. You would, as a resident of Glendale or a person that has a seat in our district, you are always going to be able to choose what's best for your kid, and you would not be stuck. If you, let's say you chose virtual and we decided to open, you would always be welcome to come back, and vice versa. If we open and you're not comfortable, then you would be able to choose virtual. The reason we're trying to be proactive with our surveys is to try to get an understanding of the staffing needs. How many, if we are virtual, how many virtual teachers would we need? If we're in person, how many teachers do we need for kids in the building? So all of those, you will be definitely in the loop on how the decision making is made in those areas.
Can I just ask?
Okay, thank you.
This may already be in the survey, but I've had a lot of parents ask me that they would like to be asked, how did they think it went in the spring? How they thought virtual learning went? What could be improved, or what could be?
Well, there's definitely areas for improvement. We are in the process of knowing that we will have some virtual component at some point, or whether for some kids or however that works, we will have professional development for the teachers, similar to what the Summer Academy teachers got. So if your child participated in Summer Academy, you probably noticed there was a different level of training on the teacher's behalf, because they actually went through many hours of training to be prepared for that, instead of just being ripped from their classrooms and sent home quick and then punt. So we will definitely do a better job at that for sure.
And there is another document, I'm a printer, and it was something about leveraging the power of social and emotional learning as you prepare to reopen and renew your school community. And that's part of the first part was just learn from families and communities, like engaging them, ask them, what has your experience been like that kind of thing. So that kind of survey question will help get the SEL component through the survey also.
For sure. So Carla, I see you have your hand raised, but I am going to email out the full document that we reviewed today. Today you got pieces of each one. I'll email that entire document out so you can read the introduction that Mia is referring to. And then I will also share, I'm going to share the screen real quick and then I'll let you go. This is what the document that you will be emailed looks like. It is 53 pages. So when I say it's hefty, these are all of the organizations that were involved in working on this. So, and it does, the table of contents basically breaks it down by each of the critical practices, and then it digs into explaining the roadmap, et cetera, and then it goes into each critical practice. So you will get the whole document, and if you're assigned to critical practice 1, you're gonna probably wanna read the introduction stuff and then move into each one of these areas. It talks about, it drills down, gives you the essential questions, how you prepare, and each one of these is a usable link. So when you get the email, it's somewhat of a black hole where you're gonna click and you're just gonna be digging into all of these drill down links, but it's all like really good stuff. So as soon as we hang up, I will email those out so that you can get a start on it. And Carla, you wanted to talk yet, so go for it.
Oh, I just wanted to make sure I understood like nuts and bolts for this committee. Our goal, I'm gathering, is by the end of our work, this preliminary round, is to have sort of basically a list, yeah. Right? We think the school should do X, Y, and Z, and put resources into very specific doables, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, our job isn't to do the doables. Our job is to recommend the doables that the people that work in the district that are the expertise, which are people on this call, some of them will dig into those further. But we will follow the roadmap. My goal for the board meeting on the 28th would be to just give them an overview of what our committee work has been like this week, explain to the board the roadmap, because this will be new to them, and how this is all working and the framework that we'll be using to plan around, if that makes sense. Anyone else? Any last thoughts before we close out? I just want to say thanks again for like an awesome group. It was very nice to hear everyone's voices. We did add Shauna Lucas. Hi, Shauna. She had a prior engagement, but she'll be hopefully joining us tomorrow for some of the work. And Shauna is on group, let's see, group number 3. So she'll be joining group number 3, and we were missing a few other people that will be joining groups tomorrow as well. So I should have mentioned this earlier, but this entire Zoom call has been recorded, so that if anyone did miss it, you can get a recording of it so that you could watch it all back. But I think
you're going to send us the slides too.
Yep, I'll send everything as soon as we hang up.
Okay.
All righty. All right, thanks everyone, and I'll see you tomorrow, same time, 11 o'clock on Zoom.
Nice to see everyone. Thank you, Shannon.
You bet. Bye.
Thanks, Shannon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.